Want to make sure they heard. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's board meeting. If you would please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is our land acknowledgement, and Director Perkins is going to go ahead and read that for us.
Yes. Evergreen Public Schools resides on the traditional lands of the Chinookan peoples and the Cowlitz tribe. They have lived on and cared for this land and its waterways since time immemorial. We thank them for their stewardship and make this acknowledgement to open a space of recognition, inclusion, and respect for all Indigenous students, families, and staff in our community.
Thank you, Director Perkins. Okay, next is adoption of tonight's agenda. Entertain a motion.
I move for adoption of tonight's agenda as presented.
Seconded. All right, first and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, let's get started. Okay, we will now open the public hearing to receive written and verbal comments regarding the proposed director district boundary changes. I'd like to call on Sue Steinbrenner, Executive Director of Facilities, for a briefing on the proposed action. Thank you, Sue.
I'll use this. Do you need to plug in? No. Good evening. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes. Great. Thank you. I am Sue Steinbrenner, Executive Director of Facilities. And just to give you a little brief background on the director districts, every 10 years following the U.S. Census, school districts have to review the boundary of each director to make sure that we have equitable geographic representation. As you know, we're divided into 5 geographic regions or districts, one for each director, and that's so you guys each have to run based on where you live in your location. By creating 5 equal director districts, geographic diversity is ensured. There were a few minor changes after the 2020 census that we needed to do to adjust, but because each position is elected by all district voters, it means so that each of you represent the equal number of people. One reminder is the director district boundaries are completely unrelated to school attendance boundaries, so this process does not change any neighborhood schools. As you know, we hired Sammamish Data Systems to come up with the maps for us. They've been posted on the website for the last 10 days, and we advertised in the Columbian to solicit written and verbal comments. So I, at this point, recommend that the board considers testimony in order to make a final determination as to whether or not to adopt the proposed director district boundary changes. And then we'll go from there. I can sit down with the folks who have comments if they do. If they don't, then you could adopt the new boundary areas at the next board meeting via resolution. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. All right, I'd now like to open it for any public testimony. If anyone is interested in providing a written or verbal comment, please do so at this time. Any comments up here? No? All right, having heard no comments, we are now closing the public hearing on the consideration of proposed director district boundary changes. Hold on one second, Lori. We're voting it to at the next one. Okay, so we will bring this back at our next meeting in which the board at that time will move to adopt the changes. Thank you. Okay. Okay, next is our Principals Month. I believe, am I instructions of you.
Thank you, President Grunwald. Yes, it's my pleasure, and I'd like to call Tony Miles up to the front of the room. He is our EAA president, so our Evergreen Administrators Association. I always get EEA and EAA mixed up. So we're just really thankful for all of our principals. 2 years of a pandemic and coming out of that, and a lot of the extreme things that our principals are dealing with, and keeping the lid on and continuing to try to press to get equitable outcomes for our students. We're just really thankful. And I'd like to express that in a written proclamation for you today. Whereas the Washington Senate has declared the month of October 2021 as National Principals Month in coordination with the efforts of the National Association of Elementary School Principals and the National Association of Secondary School Principals, working with U.S. Congress to designate National Principals Month and resolutions thereof. Whereas principals and assistant principals play significant roles in our educational system, creating hope each day for every student in their buildings by leading culture, systems, learning, and by working tirelessly each day as visionaries, assessment experts, community builders, public relations experts, budget analysts, facility managers, special program administrators, and guardians of various legal, contractual, and policy mandates and initiatives. Whereas principals and assistant principals work collaboratively with families, teachers, and district officials to develop mission statements, set performance goals and objectives for schools to achieve educational excellence and maintain high curriculum standards and expectations for students. Whereas the Association of Washington School Principals honors such exemplary principals and assistant principals who have succeeded in providing high-quality learning opportunities for students, as well as their exemplary contributions to the profession. To honor and recognize the contributions of all school principals and assistant principals to the success of each and every student in Washington State schools, our most valuable resource, and encourage residents of Washington to observe Principals Month with the appropriate ceremonies and activities that promote awareness of the importance of school leadership and ensuring that every child has access to high quality education. Now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim October 2021 as Principals Month. So can we please give a round of applause to Tony Miles, our president, and all of our principals.
Again, Tony Miles, Associate Principal at Union High School, and thank you for taking this time to recognize the work that the principals do. But we would be remiss to not be acknowledging those who work with us, our teams made up of teachers and the classified support staff that really do the day-to-day work. It takes an entire team to do the work that's done, but we are thankful that you're acknowledging us and our work, but we just want you to know that we cannot do it without our team. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, the next is the acceptance of the board consent agenda. Entertain a motion.
I move approval of the board's consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Okay, it's been first and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. It's been passed. Next is the superintendent's consent agenda. Entertain a motion.
Move for approval of the superintendent's consent agenda as presented.
Seconded.
It's been first and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. All right, that's been approved. Next is our superintendent report. Mr. Boyd.
Thank you. First of all, looking forward to the report that Dr. Williams is going to be providing in a bit to discuss and share our ambitious focus on ambitious instruction and math improvement across the district. I've been attending schools and taken time to sit down with principals and talk about some of the successes and challenges. And despite all of the challenges, they're really leaning into this focus, and it's a direct result of our staff here and the great support and coordination of that. So I'm excited for that. Had an opportunity to attend today my first ever Clark County Governmental Affairs Roundtable. And we had folks from our city managers and mayors and our the city, all the different governmental and some business leaders across the state, economic development councils, and just gave me great hope and inspired me around a community that really has an equity mindset and a heart for kids. And so each and every person, there were about 50 people around the table, and they ran around and shared their focus. And a lot of those foci line up exactly with what we're going to do. The homelessness, focus around homelessness and affordable housing, focus on trying to provide mental health access and other access for students that need support. Each and every one of them, without fail, are also focused on recruiting and retention of staff and challenged by that as well. So some of those same things, and really felt the support of the whole community. There were 3 or 4 of us superintendents there, and gave me great hope that our community really does care about our students and care about us and want the best for our kids. And then also, yeah, that's the report I have today, and that's it.
Thank you, John. Okay, next is a teaching, learning, and equity update. I'll call to the mic Dr. Charlene Williams.
Alone tonight. We have Ruth Beggs and Nathan Lee, who will also be presenting with me, and so just give us just a moment to set up. Do you need a second mic? Probably.
I'm gonna go ahead and just turn it on and leave it here. So,
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So I don't see it on the screen up there, but it's coming. She says it's coming. So we're talking about setting the stage for measurable improvement. We know that we've been talking a lot about unfinished learning that our students have had and the ways in which we have aligned our services to improve the outcomes and achievement for them. And so tonight, we want to just first anchor this in the work that has already begun. The community worked on a strategic plan. This year, we're working with Dr. Campbell and team to really unpack what these various pillars mean, how we operationalize the elements of this strategic plan. And so tonight's presentation falls squarely in the teaching and learning aspect of the plan, where we are supporting students and making sure they feel safe, welcome, and that they are learning every day. And so with that in mind, we want to just, I don't know a prettier way to say this, but sometimes we use the phrase call the baby ugly. So when we are looking at our data, what is working and what's not working with the ways we are serving our students? And James Baldwin always helps us anchor, because he says not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And so we're just going to put some information before you that just gives you the state of where we are right now as a system, and then we'll talk about the work we are doing to change those outcomes for our students. We know that this isn't just an Evergreen public schools issue. This is definitely an issue that we're facing across the nation, across our county. But we have some very specific and intentional work that we've been doing with an amazing team to change the outcomes that we're looking at. And so one thing, when we look at graphs and charts and things, we like to keep in mind that these are not just numbers. These are not just facts and figures. There is a student behind every item represented on that graph. And even the ones who are not represented, we have to remember that there are names behind each and every one of those numbers. And not only are there names, there are stories, which is what our work, especially around equity, is about. How do we find out the story around each of our students and their learning needs in order to change the outcomes for our students? So when we look at this, you see the statewide outcomes, and we see the unfinished learning represented in those pencils. Then you look at Evergreen Public Schools and our neighboring districts. And so we were charged in the spring with raising our math scores by 13%. And that's what we have been aligning all of our practices to do. So as we continue to unpack the story behind the pencils, this takes us another layer in. These data articulate our learning goals, our learning outcomes. In the yellow, you see on the left our math outcomes. And you see up there where 25% of our students met or exceeded standards. And we know and believe that more than 25% of our students deserve to meet standards in mathematics. That's before we even go under the surface to unpack who those students are. And then when we go a little deeper, we see that only 8 to 15% of our BIPOC students met or exceeded standards in mathematics. And again, we have work to do. We had the opportunity to meet with administrators this morning, and so we're sitting at tables with them as they are examining their data, and this is hitting them hard. And they are very intentional about the work that they're doing to ensure that now that we have this new mathematics curriculum, what are we doing to make sure our teachers can implement that effectively? They are organizing their data teams so that they can unpack what's working and what's not working with students. And so this information continues to fuel our resolve to stay focused on student learning in pretty much every configuration that we meet as a system. And you'll see similar patterns on the right. When you look at ELA, only 38% of our students are meeting. And again, we are in relentless pursuit of every child meeting and exceeding benchmark. And the green, I would like to draw your attention because we believe that this correlates with academic performance. When students believe they belong in the classroom, when they believe they belong as a mathematician, as a writer, as a reader, then we increase the likelihood that they will perform accordingly. And so our belonging data at elementary, middle, and high all indicate that we have some work to do. This is further data, and you'll see we've used measures, we've used Youth Truth, we've used Panorama, we've used our Healthy Youth Survey, and all of them are giving us similar strands of information about the ways in which students feel like they feel belonging and support in their schooling experience. In our earlier years, you see students feel more of a sense of belonging, but as we go up in age, you start to see that decline. And so, again, our system is working on addressing these outcomes. So I think a couple of you have seen this graph, some of you have not. But when you look at this, and in the spirit of talking about our student performance, what do you anticipate or what do you think this represents in terms of outcomes for students?
Breakdown by race.
Breakdown by race. Any other guesses?
Probably socioeconomic.
Socioeconomic status. Okay. Let's see where we are. So when we start to break those pencils down even further, and we look at how specific groups are performing, this is the disparity that we're talking about. So this shows from spring 2019 to fall 2021 that we had disparity prior to the pandemic. And it worsened, of course, during the pandemic, almost proportionately. And so we're really unpacking ways to ensure that all of those bars rise to a higher level. When we talk about equity, we're not really just talking about, a few students. We're talking about all students. What does it take to get 100% of the students meeting 100% of the targets? And that's going to take us really understanding what each student needs in order to get there. That's what our equity work is all about. And so this just gives us one view into what that work is ahead of us. So now we'll shift to so what are we going to do about it, right? So our teams have now aligned some of the work and practices from across departments to come up with a model and a framework to push our system forward. You kind of see that that's almost like a telescope. We're focusing on what will it take to lift the needle in mathematics. And so we have 3 key areas that we are addressing. Math practices. What are those teaching practices that assure that each and every student can meet the target, meet high math targets? What are the beliefs that we have? Because some of us have some baggage around mathematics. If I were to poll the room, I don't know that everyone would say, yes, I was celebrated as a math student, right? Marlena is one of our instructional leaders, and she showed us a video. She said, when did you get the invitation to the math party? And, some of us were never really invited to the math party. And we want to ensure that each of our students gets the invitation and that they can thrive when they are present in our classrooms and before any assessment, that they have the skills and tools needed to be successful. And then the final piece of this circle before I turn it over to Ruth and Nathan, it's talking about our SIP support work. And who remembers again what SIP stands for some people who haven't been here? Yes, that's our improvement plans. Thank you. So what are the systematic ways we're working with schools to ensure that students are learning? So with that, I think it's Ruth's turn.
Well, I get the fun part because I get to tell you what we are doing, how we are operationalizing the vision. So the cool thing is that we have a math vision. So I don't know if later on, if you want to ask me, I will show you the full page-long thing of our beliefs. But the new math vision from just last year is each student will make sense of rigorous mathematics in ways that are meaningful, collaborative, and relevant in order to ignite curiosity and passion for math. That's cool, but that's not really representative of what our data shows is actually happening in our district. And so our job is to figure out how do we fix that, just like Dr. Williams said. So we know, because research tells us that effective and equitable practices that include culturally responsive practices are what we need to do in order to increase. It's a good thing I'm old and I can't hear anyway, so it's okay. But am I doing something?
That was an alarm.
That was
She's
loud.
gonna fix it.
Everybody's awake.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, what I was going to say is that we are making sure that we're not only thinking about, when we think about math practices, we're thinking about from NCTM, which is the National Council of Mathematics, we're thinking about the practices they talk about, and we're thinking about culturally responsive practices and making sure that we are using those in the classroom to increase student learning. So we've got a problem of practice. So if you're familiar with problem of practice, you know that a problem of practice identifies an adult problem of practice. It's not about kids, it's about what is the through line that adults need to be doing in order to improve teaching and learning for kids. So in our district, the newest SBA data, just like Dr. Williams says, shows that 25% of our kids met math proficiency. And in iReady, this last spring, it showed 31%, which is, a little bit better, but still not good. So what we're trying to do in our case, as evidenced by our data, all students, we believe, are not consistently, all kids are not consistently receiving effective and equitable math instruction. We also know that we are not effectively dismantling the consistently disproportionate student outcomes that we've been seeing in the past at least 5 years. So we know also that it is the responsibility of leaders to build the capacity of their staffs to be able to deliver that instruction that kids so desperately need. And that's what we're working on right now. So based on the problem of practice, we have kind of flipped that and turned that into a theory of action. So we believe that if we grow our leadership capacity, so that they understand and utilize effective math practices and focus attention on especially algebraic thinking, which is the strand that is the most deficient for us in Evergreen. And if we engage in data-informed decision-making cycles, then teachers will be able to consistently deliver instruction that our kids need. Okay, as you know, our superintendent has given us an imperative. We are going to increase performance by at least 13% this year in math. And we're making sure that at every angle, we are emphasizing that and figuring out how to operationalize that for not just one kid, but for every single student. So this huge problem and this huge goal requires systematic change in our district. And so we have been working on aligning how we will do that. All right, one of the things that we're using in our teaching and learning team is we're using this book sort of to help us to learn. It's called Improvement Science and Education. And what it does is it's providing us an overview of improvement science as a framework to guide continuous improvement, and not just that, but to center equity and justice for the purpose of improving for all of our kids, especially those kids who have been marginalized by our system. So, oh, I didn't read the quote. What? Okay, so Deming defines a system as a network of interdependent components that cooperate to try to accomplish some aim, and our aim is improving outcomes for kids by 13%. So thank you, Mr. Boyd, for giving us that aim. Now, Deming's cycle of improvement is a continuous quality improvement model that consists of a logical sequence of key stages: plan, do, study, and act. The large circle that you see in the center is our year-long cycle, and the smaller circles around it represent progress monitoring around that large circle. So we're going to be planning our actions, we're doing the thing that we plan, we're studying how it worked, and then we're changing, and we're doing that consistently throughout the year so that we can continue to improve. We did our structure. This is a continuous improvement cycle right here. It looks a little bit different, but I wanted to explain to you exactly what we have planned this year and how we're going to achieve the 13% and hopefully more. So what we're going to be doing, first of all, we know that we're all in the district office, all the way, from the district office all the way to all of the people here that support. We're all here for kids. So the reason that we're here, so in thinking about operationalizing the support that kids get, what we're going to be doing is we're in the process of thinking through how that support might work. So this visual, let me see if I changed it too fast. Okay, so this visual could maybe help depict that. So what we're going to, the top line, you see SIP support. First of all, month by month by month, we're going to be supporting our leaders with school improvement. So in the past, we've had, our school improvement plans due, once a year. Yes, the plans are due, but then we haven't necessarily followed through with progress monitoring. So we're making sure that we do that this year. So in September, what we've been doing is we have been really setting the stage for that improvement. So every single month, what's going to happen is, for instance, in week 1, SIP supporters will meet to learn and plan support for school teams. In week 2, each month, there will be leadership gatherings, one of which we had today with our elementary principals, that are aligned with school improvement district and school improvement planning. Those gatherings are intentionally focused on school improvement and alignment with the district aim. Leaders will be studying evidence-based practices. They are figuring out how to implement them in their schools, and then they're studying what happens and then adjusting. Then in weeks 3 and 4, every single month, the SIP supporter will be visiting the school to talk through and walk through classrooms and figure out, what the next step is, and look at data, all of those things. And that will happen month by month every year, every month. So I keep mentioning SIP supporters. These are our SIP supporters. Each SIP supporter has 3 or maybe 4 schools. And one thing that I want you to know about SIP supporters is this work is not evaluative. The work of improving involves everyone. It does not just involve, it's not evaluative necessarily. It's about support, is what I'm trying to say. All right, so during September, we set the stage, and to be able to effectively measure implementation of actions, we talked through equitable practices, and SIP supporters have been meeting with schools to review their SIP plans and make sure that the right things and the high leverage actions are in place, and also to make sure that they've named what the student outcomes they're aiming toward are. We have been also thinking during September about what are the key components of school improvement plans that should be on every single plan. So every single school has a problem of practice and a theory of action on their school improvement plans. Every single school is focused on at least one evidence-based math practice that they're expected to implement in their schools. We've also, on the plans, we've designated what do we mean by progress monitoring. So if you think about progress monitoring, there are 2 types that we're thinking about. We're thinking about process measures, and that means, did we do the thing that we said we were going to do? If we said we were going to implement evidence-based practice 1, which is goal setting and following through on goals, did we, in math with kids, did we do it, and can we see evidence of that? So that's a process measure. And then, of course, student outcomes. We are thinking about long-term and short-term measures. So Mr. Boyd named for us the long-term measures. Those measures are SBA and iReady. The short-term measures, schools need to name themselves, and those are the measures that they're thinking about. How do we figure out along the way if we're on track in between those big measures? And so Nathan's going to talk for just a minute about those.
Good evening. I'm Nathan Lee, and I'm elated to join the digital learning team this year, coming to you from Fisher's Landing Elementary, and working very closely alongside assessment and instruction this year to really analyze what are we doing, how can we use the data to inform our instruction on a day-to-day basis, and how can we put practices in place that quickly allow us to look at the now what behind the data and to understand how are our students experiencing education on a day-to-day basis. And so at the elementary level, one of the things that we've been working on so far this fall is creating a data grid, basically a responsive collection tool where elementaries can implement or record their reading level benchmark data, as well as the new math unit assessments, and entering very similarly to a grade book. And then it is dynamically going into grids like this to be able to disaggregate the data. On the left, you see data by proficiency as well as by growth, so that we can understand at a classroom level, at a grade level, and also at a building level, how are students performing throughout the year, in addition to our diagnostic data. So this is giving a more regular check-in. And then also going deeper into that understanding by race. How are our students experiencing each of our units of math, each of our levels of reading throughout the year, and then also the capacity to go deeper into by program, so special education, LAP, ELL support, and understanding how are all of our groups of students experiencing instruction within the classroom. And so in this example, this is showing 3 units of math throughout the year being named for each grade level. And when scores are entered, it will indicate, it can show disproportionality within an individual unit assessment. And this, again, all comes from simply entering an end-of-unit score, where it goes deeper and takes away, many data teams have been trying to compile this data by hand, and so this does it automatically as soon as the data is entered. So that's one way of measuring short-term measures at the elementary. At the high school, we're also working very closely to work with existing data and making meaning to the classroom. So how do we make ties between iReady, for example, and with our grade level content? What does it mean when we have a student who's coming to us 2 or 3 years behind in comprehension and trying to access grade level content in a science class, for example? And so working very closely with instruction to support and scaffold students in gaining grade level access. Thank you.
So now it's October. You're almost done with me, yay. But I want to let you know that in October is super exciting because now that the stage is set, we have our wonderful C&I team has created a monitoring tool for each of the 8 evidence-based practices that we've named in our leadership gathering and that they've chosen. So each school is going to be using a monitoring tool in October with their supporter as they walk through classrooms to try to determine what is the level of implementation of this practice that we're putting in place, and you know, how am I going to build the capacity of my staff to be able to implement this thing. So once again, not evaluative at all, just trying to build the capacity of people to be able to ensure that there are evidence-based, effective practices, culturally responsive practices happening in classrooms. This data is going to be impacting the leadership cadence. So it will be impacting their PD, because as they collect the data and take a look at it, it will help them determine what the next steps are in learning for their staff. It will affect PLCs, because PLCs, as you saw the grid that Nathan has created, they're going to be entering data and looking at that data and trying to determine next steps in their classrooms. So we're super excited about what's happening and the systems that are being put in place. I wanted to lastly tell you this impacts our school improvement plan timeline. So we have a much more rigorous school improvement plan timeline this year than we've ever had before. I'm excited about it, and guess what? Our leaders are excited about it too. We just had, like I said, a meeting this morning and got some great feedback about, wow, we're going to have 4 checkpoints on our SIP. That's never happened before. So on November 14th, November 29th is the first board presentation. Every one of our leaders will be there. Each board member will be, you might already know this, but will be in a room with their leaders from their region. And then the leaders will be presenting their plan summary to you. We will, of course, ahead of time be sharing that plan summary with you. It's linked in here, and also giving you a template to record any information that you get so that you can report back to the rest of the members about what's going on with your schools. So we are just super excited about it. The leaders are excited about it, and that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Williams.
Thank you. As you can see, we have an amazing team that's doing some amazing work to really keep our eye on the prize. I think I saw a few principals get giddy when they saw Nathan's spreadsheets, like, I've been trying to organize this data myself, and there's no way. I mean, just the brilliance in terms of being able to efficiently pull data from multiple sources and make it usable so that teachers, principals can plan and make moves accordingly. Even today, when we were in our elementary principal meeting, and some of our specialists and TOSAs who are doing action research cycles with students and groups of students were like, oh my gosh, this is going to make my work with schools so much easier. And so, and that's what I think this is all about. You saw, I think it was this slide here where, the ask has been, since we entered, how do we align all of the amazing work, all the teams, all the different skills, all the departments getting together, working in one direction towards a common aim, and it's beginning to feel more and more coherent and more aligned, according just to reports that we're hearing from some of our leaders. So I'm just going to close us with this. You will hear more about this in our November meeting right before you are able to go into your rooms with your schools that Ruth mentioned. There are math practices and math beliefs that anchor the work that we are doing, because as important it is to do the right behaviors, we have to have the right beliefs that anchor that. So I just want to call our attention to the National Council of Supervisors of Mathematics, and TOTOS, which is a national organization for Latin administrators, collaborated on a position statement because your beliefs in mathematics are that important. And so these 2 slides just kind of highlight some of the essential statements in that framework. There's a whole, I think, about 6-page paper with references and resources that kind of amplify why this work is important. But that mathematics and performance and access is truly a social justice issue. We know that when people are proficient and can perform well, we open doors of opportunity like never before. And so it is on us, it's a moral imperative that we make math and all content accessible to all students, but this is the area where we find the most disparity, where math has been treated pretty exclusively. So when we talk about fair and equitable teaching practices, it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. 100% of our kids meeting 100% of the targets. That it's not tailored towards certain groups to meet and be proficient. That we won't be able to predict who will perform well because they will all be doing so. And here's yet another page that offers even more explanation of why these belief systems and structures are important. We know that you believe in our students. Thank you for entrusting us with this opportunity, and we'll stay in front of you throughout the year giving you updates. I'll take any questions or comments you have at this time.
While they're thinking about questions, I just want to thank you and the team. We're so lucky to have you as a former math educator and a turnaround principal who's done this. And you know, we have a simple notion that our notion is that we have a lot of talent in this district. Many of them are sitting in the seats in front of us, and yet we're underperforming. And we know we can do better. And we know that with the talent we have, the resources that we have, that we can make a difference for our students. You can see it's a simple notion, but the complexity of trying to accomplish our goal of 13% across 23,000 students in 38 schools. So it requires a very strategic approach. I feel really good and about what our team has done, and I just want to thank you for your leadership.
I don't have a question, but a comment. I'm excited to see these short-term results. The way you guys have put that together, it's going to be really interesting to see sort of month by month. And to be able to see that and to be able to track that is pretty cool.
Thank you.
How many questions would you like me to ask?
Or you?
I have a couple. I was watching the disaggregation data that you were showing expanded out from that pencil graph, and the question kind of entered my mind is that we know that historically there have been biases that favor the points of view of certain people in these exams, like SBA and SAT, ACT, which has been described to me sometimes as an Anglo bias or an ability bias. What's your sense, you, Ruth, or Nathan, about how much of that is a barrier for SBA and iReady today?
That's a very good question. I know work has been done to try to mitigate bias that are in test items, and you know they're going through more rigorous work to try to assure that. And we know that it exists, and so our job is to help our students become critical thinkers and to kind of weed through that with some of the practices that we're teaching them in terms of how to do problem solving and those kinds of things. But I know some work has been done, but I think there's yet more to do.
I'm so glad that this is engaged work this year. I've been hoping for something like this for a long, long time. I can remember my daughter, this is like decades ago, so there are no people to name or blame about it, but just watching in the elementary school environment how much greater enthusiasm there is for reading, and mathematics is taking kind of second place, just structurally, based on the strengths of the people and also the curricula. And I'm glad to see this addressed, especially in elementary school. A kid that's interested in math in the first grade is never going to stop, unless pressed out of it.
The earlier, the better.
The earlier, the better. What about the idea, I always have to ask this one, of computer sciences or coding, programming in those intermediate grades?
We like that idea. We haven't focused in those particular content areas for this work as of yet, but I'm certain that, you know, that's yet another opportunity to ensure students are engaged in math, and we do have students taking advantage of those things. But I think we can expand those.
Making a little robot run around on the floor, that kind of thing.
Yes.
How do the National Math Councils discuss that kind of angle?
Around the
use of writing
Coding.
programs
Oh,
to develop algebraic thinking and algorithmic thinking.
Well, they named the things you just named, algebraic thinking, and to prepare them to take whatever the courses are. So they lean on the 8 mathematical practices. So whatever content area you're in, what are those 8 mathematical practices that apply K-12, content agnostic when it comes to mathematics, to support their learning in those areas.
Just based on my personal experience, I was always more interested in programming than I was in Euclidean proofs.
Okay, yeah, because it's applied mathematics.
Yeah.
And that, yeah.
Once you see the point. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question. We have a history in our district of allowing a lot of autonomy in individual schools. No, this is not an I gotcha. My question is, it makes sense to me that we are more systematic without being overly prescriptive. We don't want to tell a teacher every little move that they make all day long. That's not very creative, and I know that our teachers are creative thinkers, so we want them to have that ability. So I guess the question I have is, are we, as we're rolling all this out, addressing the concept of the ability to be inventive in their thinking, but yet still be systemic?
Yeah.
So that we know we get results and we see. So, and I know it's a fine balance.
Yes, yeah.
But I'm excited about what I'm seeing, and again, that data information is, I remember a time when there was no disaggregated data at all. I'm so old on this, that to see it laid out like that is really encouraging to me.
Well, I'll go first, and I know John probably wants to answer, and maybe these two will like to answer that whole.
They're on the edge of their seats.
Well, I know, they're about to come on up. But one thing that, like my first 90 days was listening, right? Listening to principals, directors, anyone who wanted to have a conversation with me. And a recurring theme was focus and alignment. They didn't want to be 38 little districts anymore, because that freedom didn't have enough form to produce the outcomes. And so right now we're working on form, and we can have freedom within form, but we got to have some form first. And so that's kind of been the art of this work and this team. What they're trying to do is give them the form so that, the freedom we have actually still leads to our desired outcomes.
I couldn't say it better than that.
Thank you. That makes sense to me. And I'm glad to hear that, because I have been a little concerned about systems not being real systems.
Right.
And the cohesion piece, I think we're really needing from all of us, board included.
Indeed. Happy to answer any more questions. Of course, you can email me. There are links in the slides that we gave you if you want to go deeper into, this.
Well, the good news, we'll have plenty of opportunities to
Yes.
dig into
All
this
year.
over
All
all year.
year.
And
I'll be back.
many, thank you so much, Dr. Williams.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. With that, we're moving on to our legislative update. I'll go ahead and turn this over to Director Perkins for an update.
Evening. We have an opportunity, now that the General Assembly is completed. I attended in a WASDA role, which did not give me the credential to vote or anything like that, but I ended up watching most, if not all, of the positions as they were debated, along with, I think Julie had the credential for Saturday, and Jackie had it for Friday. And it was really useful. The work that we did to prioritize and identify those positions, I think, was really useful in jogging my memory, because each of them in turn would ask me what the context of positions were based on my past work with the Legislative Committee. So that was good work. Now we have the opportunity to name the positions that we consider top 10. We have until the 17th to do that. And ought to, I can either take that list as it stands and produce the top 10, or we could have another conversation about it, but it pretty much has to happen before next Monday, which is their deadline. They extended it from due tomorrow to due next Monday. And then our voice will be part of the WASDA prioritization. I understand that Sandra Zavala-Ortega of the Vancouver district has taken my place and is running to be reelected on the Legislative Committee, and I think that would be a good idea to consider her in your vote.
So, Rob, when we workshopped this a couple weeks ago, I don't remember exactly when it was, and we each came with our top 5 priorities. I think Lori took that list, right? And then we asked staff and we got their priorities, and a lot of them were very similar themes: funding, special education funding. So I guess my question is, are you going to take that list now? And are you going to be the one that, because only one of us submits the priorities for our district. And since you're our legislative rep,
Right.
you'll take that. And do you need more from us than what we prioritized that night?
Well, I think our top three are special services funding and special services funding, followed very closely by special services funding. So,
Right?
because, yes. Because that is how we'll be able to fill those 80 positions, I think, and make those things more appealing. And that's a statewide ask now. I've never seen more alignment, and I'm hoping that each of the groups that advocate and lobby in Olympia will stand with WASDA and with us about that particular issue. It's been underfunded for 40 years, and we're seeing the results of that really hurt kids these days, just statewide. So, a bit of advocacy there, but I'll be looking for all the special education positions and putting them in the top 10, followed by, I guess, whatever advice you have to give me, or I could talk with John about it and get the district's sort of consensus. Next week, the legislative committee will see the data that we generate from offering our top 10 and produce the beginnings of a platform for WASDA, which our legislative rep next January will use with the others and Olympia on the Day on the Hill.
Will that be ready for the listening session at the ESD in December?
I think it will. Some preliminaries will be. For the legislators' listening session? Yeah, it'll be ready by then. There was a year when I read them out loud at that session just as a DA6 ESD 112 kind of representative, brought WASDA's positions in there before the superintendents brought detail to those positions, because they were in alignment 4 years ago, 3 years ago. They still are. They still are. So I'll fill the list out with that in mind, and could I have a short conversation with you sometime
Yeah, I would
this
love
week?
to. And the ESD 112 superintendents have put together a position, a platform as well. And so we can compare notes
Yeah.
with that as well. It'd be a nice tool for us to be able to sit down and talk through, and be happy to do that.
Yeah, and we can take that work and bring it into the meetings with Melissa Gomboski when she comes into town.
And just to elevate the funding gap for special education, in the meeting we had with the government and the superintendents today, Washougal, for example, pays $2 million a year for out of their levy to support special education services. For us, that is about a $10 million gap that we're paying for, and so it's a significant amount of money that would really support us to help our students.
It's getting the numbers of those shortfalls statewide into legislators' hands that will put some strength behind the arguments, along with the stories. Along with the stories. In the past, Heather Fowler has been very helpful in getting us Evergreen stories to talk about other issues because of the way ALE and I think some access waivers and things brought kids to graduation who were like in the hospital. But we can do the same thing if we know the stories for behavioral, for academic, for English language learners, which we're starting to call bilingual learners instead.
Multilingual.
Multilingual now, even better. And so we can use everybody's help, really. If you've got something to say about it, let's get aligned and let's get the arguments going, or the advocacy going.
Thank you.
Do you, so then you'll be able to submit by the 17th?
Oh, yeah.
Get ours
Yeah,
in?
easily.
Want to make sure we get ours in. Okay,
And that's pretty much it.
all right.
The next legislative thing will be that December meeting.
Okay, next is board comments. Any comments by the board?
I just want to chat a little bit about the listening sessions that we had last week, having to do with the strategic plan and the work that we're doing. And the superintendent requirements and things of that nature. It was just really good to hear from the various different stakeholders. I feel like people were very honest and open about things that need improvement, things that we're doing right, what their wish list is for leadership in the district. So I felt good about that, and I know all of us attended meetings. It was a busy day, but it was really valuable information. It was very good, very thought-provoking. And the ones with the students, oh my gosh, they're the best. I mean, they really were fabulous, and those kids, they just lay it out there, and I love that. I just love it. Jackie and I have a breakfast with the board at, Thursday at, is it Evergreen? And I know we're gonna get some good feedback from kids, so I just think our students, and I like it that we were calling them scholars all day, and I love that, and because they should be considered scholars, and so it was exciting information.
And I believe that Google Doc is still open until tomorrow. Is that correct, Lori, to be able to do? So Thursday. So if you didn't get an opportunity to complete that questionnaire, that survey, it is still open and available. So we want as many voices as we can possibly get.
And that went out to the whole community?
It's gone out in emails. It's gone out a couple of different ways. That way it gets in the hands of everybody. And so we can have as much feedback, yeah.
I hope so.
More? Sorry.
No, I wanted to talk about the last Leadership WASDA session, which should have been in June, but COVID kind of canceled it. Was in Walla Walla last week. And we got a look at the Early Childhood Center there. They have a pretty unique circumstance, and some of the same problems that we have in Clark County, the shortages of availability, the waiting lists, even in commercial early childhood education. And got to look at their transitional kindergarten program. And I've got some literature about that. John, if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah, and that'd be a great future topic too, because we've added pre-K in the district, quite a few programs. So I think that in early learning, we have moved around some staffing to have a director of early learning that will be onboarding Galen, who will be doing our early learning work. And so we're excited to pull together a team with Dr. Williams and our early learning staff, and we can come back, and I think that'll be an exciting report for the board to see the plans that we have in place and are doing.
Yeah, and each year we get a presentation about early learning in connection with the certifications for the private providers. Perhaps that would be a good time to workshop that in. We also sat down with students and librarians and had a pretty serious discussion about book challenges, because Walla Walla has seen a lot of library book challenges, and a community that's less peaceful than ours on that subject, and learned about their strategy and the reasons why they made those choices. It was pretty much a mirror for the book challenges that I participated in and seen happen here, including the most recent one. It just kind of made me thoughtful about where their stuff intersects with our stuff, and turns out they didn't use their IMC for it. And so we can be pretty glad that we already have a basic structure with citizen parent support in there and everything. Vic already talked about the stakeholder feedback. I was along for those. And tomorrow I'll be in the Online Learning Advisory Committee meeting over Zoom, only too appropriate. I think we'll be discussing CTE and ALE, which I know WASDA has a strong position in support of enhancements for that. Now we can carry the district voice in there as well. I think it's aligned. That's all.
Jacqueline, do you have anything? Any comments? No? Okay.
No.
You have your future agenda item now.
I just wanted to thank Jackie for attending the 2 days of General Assembly and taking those. That was a long day on that Friday, and we got through it, and Rob was there too. But doing a conference virtually like that, but it was really interesting this year. There's one of the things that WASDA does, and what Rob talked about, the legislative priorities, is we're advocating for students across the state, and the things that we do as a state affects districts throughout our region and throughout the entire state. And so it's really about all of our students in Washington succeeding. And so some of the positions on there was a little bit of divide, but good conversation and things that, for us to be aware of as we move forward.
I will say that it would be better to do that in person.
Oh, definitely,
Online
definitely, yeah.
Being together, I think, would make a big difference.
Yeah, from experience, it really is a different thing.
It does.
Yeah.
You can amend positions, for example.
Yeah, which would have been a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, I do have a couple of things. Let's see. Thursday night, John and I participated in the Harlem Wizards basketball game. Realized just how old I am. Hurt for days, but it was a great event, raised a lot of money for the school, and we had so much fun. The energy was up. It was I enjoy doing that every time they bring them to town.
My favorite part of the event was the tip-off, and they grabbed Jenny and carried her, ran her across the floor, twisted her around, and it was outstanding.
Yeah, that's always fun.
Feel like you were reliving your glory years, Sean, as a basketball player?
I would only referee. I chose not to play wisely, I think.
So that was a lot of fun. And then Director Weatherspoon and I have been working on our student rep, what are we calling them? Student board representatives. So we're really excited to kick off that new initiative with the board, and we have applicants that we are going to begin interviewing, and I believe we have five applicants. And we will seat 2 juniors this year as a representative of the school board through our high schools, and eventually that will grow into 2 representatives from each of our high schools that will work directly with us, and then report back to their schools and report to us, vice versa. So that's another initiative to get student voice on the board and out in the community, and to hear what they have to say and base our decisions with a lot more input from them. So we're really excited to get that going. That has been something we've been working on for a while now. COVID's kind of prevented some of that going forward, but we're finally hitting the gas. And that's all I have. So anything else before next? Nope? Okay. Next is any future agenda items.
I was actually interested in seeing the Affirmative Action Plan annual report. I know that you guys created that plan in 2021, and I think a report is due at this point.
Happy to add that as a future topic.
Okay, thank you.
Any other future agenda items? I know there was a quick note of earlier. Did we get that noted?
Yeah, and we're building a board calendar with all the future topics on it, and meeting with the vice president and the president to try to figure out the timing of each individual report. So we'll add all of those to that to the list, and then we'll discuss it in board leadership as to when we do those reports.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted, there was a mention, I think, was it your comments that's
The early
talking about
childhood.
something, and we said, yes, that
Yeah.
was what it was. I just want to make sure we make note of that to get that on a future agenda, the early childhood.
Noted.
It has been a regular yearly agenda item, and it fits really well with the time of year.
Really excited to do that report.
Thanks. I could use a reminder myself, maybe we all could, about where the performing arts calendars are. I think the district elementary, middle, high school concerts are next month, aren't they?
We also now have a calendar with all activities. Well, we're trying to get all the activities in the district for us on our Google Drive
Yeah.
as well.
Love a chance to go to one of those, several of them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, the next is public comments. Any community member wishing to address the board may do so during this designated time on the agenda for public comments, as long as the comments are not, personnel related or about an individual employee or student and are not legal in nature. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to address the board. I kindly ask that you are considerate to that time because we do have quite a few speakers this evening. Comments are to be directed to the board of directors as a whole, may not be addressed to any individual member of the board, the administrative staff, or the audience. Please state your name and district affiliation, if any. First on the list is Doug Lasher. Is the person, no view virtuals, okay. Doug? Again, no? Okay. Mindy Troffer Cooper. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Mindy Troffer Cooper. I'm a para at Heritage in the Kinderbridge program, and I'm also the PSC Large Group President. I received a letter that I would like to read to you all. It says, the value of paraeducators in our district. Many say that something is worth or valued at what people are willing to pay for it. Paraeducators in the Evergreen Public School District are grossly underpaid and therefore grossly undervalued. This letter outlines several reasons why the paraeducator role is vitally important to students' wellness and achievement, and how the paras in EPS are deserving of much higher pay, along with more time to better serve the students than they are currently receiving. Paras develop strengths, confidence, skills, and morale. A para in our district says, in my nearly 2 decades working as a paraeducator, education assistant, teaching assistant, I have had many titles and seen much student progress, success, growth, development, and achievement. Something that has become evident working with many, many students over the years is what we paras have the power and privilege to get really to know our students' interests and strengths and to build on those. We make learning meaningful, fun, and accessible. We instill confidence in those with learning challenges of many forms, encouraging and supporting students to develop a mindset that they can and do learn new things with support and effort gives them the confidence, willingness, and skills to be unstoppable. Paras help meet students' basic and social emotional needs to support learning. Paraeducators are safe, consistent, caring adults in children's lives. Not only do we attend to their basic needs and rights of hygiene, safety, food, play, belonging, and confidence, but also to their emotional well-being, and then finally their academic needs and rights. If you take into consideration Maslow's hierarchy of needs, paraeducators support students to get their most basic needs met so that they may be more ready to tackle the academic tasks set forth by their busy teachers. We also get to really know our students and build rapport with them, which not only boosts their morale, but also results in a significant reduction and even elimination of undesired behaviors. We know that behavior is communication, often based in trauma, and we take the time to find out what is really behind the behavior to meet the social, emotional needs of every one of our students. I have potty trained, fed, loved, worried, taught the importance of clean clothes, read to, taught more than one to tie shoes, comforted, taught the importance of respect for self and others, reported abuse and neglect. And those aren't even the academics that we all do. Paras comfort, inspire, respect, lead, emphasize, and advocate. A para in our district said, we comfort anxiousness, we inspire to shoot for the stars. We earn trust, we lead with respect, and learn individual student interests and characteristics so we can really tailor learning for them. While respecting boundaries, we instill safety and security during and after escalation. We bring lightheartedness to an otherwise chaotic school experience. We balance our own mental health while empathizing deeply with a wide variety of students every day. Teach empathy, self-respect, and above all, advocate for the fair, respectful treatment of our students. Paraeducators impact achievement. Our recent study finds that teacher assistants boost academic outcomes for students, most clearly in reading. Hamlet Loud and Clifton found that paraeducators had a positive impact on students' reading and math achievement scores on state standardized tests, and that these impacts were particularly strong for students of color.
Mindy, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we've gone over our time, but we do have your letters.
Thank you so
I was
much.
reading along with you, so we'll read through these. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Julia Apple. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Julia Apple. I teach special education at Hearthwood Elementary. I would like to talk about our paraeducators. And I was here last month for the same reason, which is frustrating. There is no part of education that is easy. Everyone within the field, including you, works really hard to make miracles happen. We all have different challenges, certainly, but everyone in this profession has them. There is one difference that stands out right now between the difficult task you have and the difficult task we, as people working directly with students, have. That difference is that we don't get to say no when it comes to providing what our students ask for. When our students say to us, in whatever way they can, I can't do this, I need more help, we would never tell them, no, I'm sorry, we just can't do that for you. Instead, we say, yes, I hear you, and I'll get you what you need. Then we work harder to provide it. We ask our colleagues for support, we teach ourselves new skills, we try different approaches, we get creative. This is a non-negotiable in education. We say yes when there's a need, and then we find a way to make it happen, not the other way around. It appears that saying yes, then figuring it out how to make it work is not a new solution for you. I'm seeing it with inclusion right now. It's the right thing to do, so you say yes, maybe without a fully formed vision of how it's going to happen. Then you, which is actually more like your schools, your employees, your administrators, your paras, your teachers, figure out how to make it successful. You can tell yourselves it's budget constraints, and it might be part of it, because who can argue with numbers? But if it's possible to say yes to other things and then figure out how to pay for them, why not with this? I'll also say educators have time constraints and energy constraints and constraints on resources, and we still find a way to do this work. All of this makes me think it's more about beliefs. I invite you to try this on as a fact. The classified personnel who work in this district are the most important people in your workforce. They feed your students, they greet your families, they help your students do the work the teachers assign to them, they get your students to and from school safely each day, and so many other things. Without them, your schools would not function. If you believe this, and I don't mean in your brain, but if you believe this in your gut, that your special education paras and all of your classified staff are an essential part of your students' success, then your answer should be yes when they ask for what they need. Educators can and will always perform miracles with what we're given because we believe in our students and we want them to be successful in what matters to them. Your classified employees are telling you what they need to be successful. If you are committed to functioning schools and you believe the fact that they are the reason you have them, you should start by saying yes to their request and then do what you've done before and what educators do every day and make it work. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Next on the list is Lynn Nichols. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Lynn Nichols, and I'm a physical therapist assistant. I'm an itinerant staff. I've worked for the school district for 30 years. I've been out there in the trenches with all of these other amazing classified staff. I can honestly say I've worked in every school in this district over the 30 years. And I know how difficult their job is. And what we all went through during COVID was unbelievable. And we're now looking at the aftermath of what's going on. And I'm seeing a lot of chaos and a lot of mayhem. And I think everybody is doing above and beyond the jobs that they've been hired. I think my comments are more towards us long-term folks that are looking for a little bit more than what has been offered to us. And I understand the 10%, 9%, 8% to try and get more staffing. But I don't feel that the 6% is representative of our years of experience, our expertise, our knowledge. And I think what's happening right now is us long-term people are picking up the slack. They're doing double duty, triple duty because of the shortage. And people are getting injured. People are being put in positions that they have not been properly trained, and they're not being compensated. I guess I'm looking for a little bit more wiggle room in these increases, especially for us long-term people that have been here, because people are seeing that this 10% increase in 9, they're not seeing it justified in their increase at 6%. And I myself feel like I've been locked out and stuck in a pay scale that, you know, I should be getting more as well. I think it's difficult for some of us to understand how is it that administrative staff got an 8% increase. We're trying to figure out what justifies that. We are all doing double, triple duty because of our shortage, and we're trying to figure out how is that justified? What validated that increase to 8? Many of us are here because we love our jobs, and it's not about the money, but we need to be compensated, and we need more. Especially us long-term people that have given our entire career to this district. We've given our brains, our body, our soul to these kids because we love them and we love this job, but we need more.
Thank you, Lynn. Next is Kate Barrett. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Kate Barrett. I'm a special educator at Hollingsworth Academy, and I can't do my job without adequate staff support. I can't keep students safe without staff to support in utilizing preventative strategies to help students stay regulated. The students that we work with are incredibly complex and require multiple adults to be responsive to their immediate needs. I can't ensure that all of my students are accessing things like our great new math curriculum if I don't have the staff to support them to get and stay regulated enough to learn. For the past 8 years that I've been a special educator in this district, every year I've had extended time periods that I've been short staff assistants needed to provide one-on-one support designated on their IEPs. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been more and more open paraeducator positions. In my building, we currently have 10 open staff assistant positions. It has led to extremely unsafe situations and incredibly exhausting days. This is unacceptable. Lack of appropriate staff support to meet the needs of students with special needs is an equity issue that I don't think gets nearly the amount of attention it deserves. I strongly believe that we can attract and retain staff support if we pay them a wage that is competitive with other districts and increase their hours so that they have enough time to collaborate with the educators that they work with. I'm grateful for the amazing staff that I've gotten the opportunity to work with. It breaks my heart that they are paid so little that they can barely pay for basic needs without a second or third income. The job of a paraeducator requires impeccable skills in things like decision-making, patience, and attention to detail. But most importantly, being a paraeducator requires a heart for working with students with unique needs. We are so lucky to have paraeducators that care deeply about our students. We need to pay them a wage that acknowledges the important work that they are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Next is Samantha Voller. Welcome.
Hi. Hello, my name is Samantha Voller. I am a special education paraeducator at Lily Hill Elementary. I'm also one of the newer paraeducators to have joined our district. This is my second year with Evergreen. However, I am the daughter of an educator who has been with our district for many years, to 1920. Jennifer Voller, love her. So I have a deep understanding of just how much work and heart is put into these students by everyone who is in our Evergreen School District. And as a product of the Evergreen School District as well, I think it's really great. However, I can speak very much to the retention of the staff. As a second-year person, I had teachers last year who thanked me for just staying through the entire year. Because paraeducators are worked so hard for so little, it's hard to continue to do the work that we do for what we make. For example, I am currently missing my second job right now because I want to speak on this issue. And yes, I need a second job in order to survive, and I'm a single woman without kids. I know plenty of people here who also are trying to do this with families, and that is terrifying. So I speak in representative of the amazing classified staff that couldn't be here tonight because they're working other jobs or have families to be home with. One of the most important things about classified staff is relationship building with these students. In order to form a relationship with a student to better serve them and help them grow, they have to be around. And if you continue to treat your classified staff in the way that we are through our pay and through being overworked and short-staffed, you're going to have more and more turnover, which will never benefit the kids. We need to build these bonds with children, and we can't do that on the wages that we're paid currently. It's a safety concern, especially I've worked in behaviors last year. I worked with special ed, which of course is behaviors and academics this year. If you do not have the staffing, if you do not have the ability to work with a team of people to meet these children's needs, it's not going to work. It's just not sustainable. I also want to say that I knew already going into applying and becoming a member of the Evergreen School District that my pay was low. However, I was inspired to continue on. I knew, okay, maybe I'll have to take a job during the summer. The wage that is presented is not advertised properly. It is by spread pay, and when trying to get just the 10-month amount so that I could maybe have one job during the school year and one job during the summer, I was told I cannot do that. So the rate that I'm at is actually much lower because it's being paid out through 12 months instead of 10 months. So that is just something to keep in mind as well. So yes, I thank you for your time, and I hope that you have heard everyone here today because this is your bread and butter, this is your heart. So, yeah.
Good job.
Thank you, Samantha. Next on the list is Shelley Prothrow. Welcome.
Good evening, Board, Mr. Superintendent. My name, as you stated, is Shelley Prothrow, and I'm a paraeducator right over here at Hollingsworth Academy. But I am also the mother of 2 boys at Marion Elementary School. In fact, Mr. Boyd and Dr. Williams have both joined in my classrooms at different points. Mr. Boyd last year to do yoga with me and my students. And this past year, Dr. Williams joined coworkers of mine just a couple days ago when we were debriefing about the equitable communication practices and how to ensure enough processing time for students. Yes, I, a paraeducator, was leading both of those sessions. At my school, most students require one-on-ones. As Kate, my teacher, just stated, there are 10 job postings for my school alone. That guarantees there are 10 staff missing without anybody being sick. Because of this, my school currently has 4 broken windows, multiple staff injuries, damaged equipment, and students becoming more dysregulated, destructive, and violent every single day. This is not due to the lack of training, work ethic, energy, care, or effort by our staff, who are absolutely, arguably the best of the best, but because we don't have enough staff. We are exhausted and feel zero support from the district. Today, I, however, am not coming to you as an employee, but as a mother. My boys are in the 4th and 1st grade in the dual immersion program and are both neurodivergent, which means they do require some additional assistance. My youngest, Jai, is a COVID long hauler. Jai's brain has been affected in ways we are just now understanding, and at times he's been requiring unexpected interventions. Sadly, he is not alone. District-wide, there has been a surge of students needing IEP-level care, especially in kindergarten and 1st grade, leaving staff stretched extremely thin and exhausted. We're exhausted because there's too much need and not enough staff. Due to the complete imbalance of students' needs versus staff's ability, Jai has started to self-harm out of frustration and dysregulation. Let me repeat that for you. Due to there not being enough staff to service the needs of the student body, my 6-year-old baby is punching himself in the face and banging his head against the wall at school because the equitable support he needs is not there or available. The amazing staff and administration at Marion are and have been doing everything they can, but they can't always get to him and many other students in time. Many days I am having to go on my lunch to help de-escalate and get him back on track. When I'm supposed to be eating and taking a mental health break so I can help my students the way they need, I have to go to another school to support my son, which I will do happily every single time because he and the staff deserve every bit of support and help they are not getting from the district. The mental health of your staff and students is suffering, and this is unacceptable. I know I am not the only parent or staff going through these kinds of situations. Because you, the district, undervalue paraeducators, you are short-staffed, students are suffering, and you are not in legal compliance with many student 504s and IEPs. This is unacceptable. You know better. Now do better and pay them.
Thank you for your comments. Next on the list is Sierra. Sorry, I can't. I know it's a G. Welcome.
So it goes without saying that districts across the country and public schools in general are underfunded, and that revenue is hard to come by, and that is not a unique problem here. And it comes from the entire community to say that we need more. As a newer staff member that transplanted from across the river, I was able to support myself as an individual in Oregon, working as a regular education assistant and a tutor, jobs that are very similar. I moved across the river just a few years ago, and while it was okay for a little bit, the amount of pay that we receive and the process by which we are allocated onto the pay scale is a little concerning. I had about 7 years of experience that was not counted for anything because of the way that HR processes experience. And I dealt with it. I care about working in public schools and working in the field of public education. I have a bachelor's degree in science and a minor in child, youth, and family studies. I myself was a homeless student, a student in transition as a child, and dealt with chronic illness since birth, and struggled my way through. So it is a bit frustrating that I have gotten this far and can't even afford to rent an apartment in the area and have to rely on my partner. I have to disproportionately rely on my partner to help supplement living here. And that's just being housed. It doesn't touch scrimping and saving for groceries and all the other things that we need to be able to have adequate brain function and work and do our jobs and be excellent and rise to the occasion of our jobs every day. And so while I do understand the systemic issues that present themselves throughout our country, it is very hard considering the increase in cost of living, especially, that we can't afford to be here, realistically. So, but we're here still, and we will continue to be here still, and we will do everything we can to fight for our ability to stay and do our jobs and be here every day.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you all for your comments. With that, that actually is the end of our meeting for tonight. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to end. 7:09. We will not be going into a workshop this evening, so that is all for tonight, folks. Thank you for coming and have a good evening.